Obsession will take you further than talent ever can, but the best entrepreneurs know that that's just the beginning. When obsession fuels you to create scalable systems, that's where real growth happens. Dan Martell is a serial entrepreneur, author of Buy Back Your Time, has over 1 million followers online, and has helped scaled and exited multiple companies, and now helps other 8- and 9-figure entrepreneurs do exactly that. In this episode, Dan breaks down exactly how businesses scale and why most of them don't ever get to that point. You'll learn how to build systems, give your time back, and create teams that are completely interdependent. He has one of the most interesting stories that I've honestly ever heard on this podcast, and I am super excited to dive in. Dan, it's good to have you on the podcast. Thanks for joining us today. I've been looking forward for this one. This is one of those full circle moments. I've been following you for a really long time, and so it's fun to flip the script, get to interview a little bit, get to learn a little bit one-on-one. So I'm excited. Thanks for joining.
Well, dude, it's an honor, man. I'm a fan of a person that commits to the content game. As you know, it's not easy. A lot of people want to do it. They want to dabble, but you've gone pro. So anything I can do to serve your audience, and I'm always committed to it 110%. So anything you ask me, whatever you need from me, and I'm looking to learn too. So let's have some fun.
I love it. So every single podcast is broken up in 3 sections. The first one, I let the audience ask you questions. So these are kind of fun. Sometimes they're off the wall. They go do a little bit of research and they chuck them at you. So I'll kind of throw some of that at you, and we'll use this to get to know you a little bit. The first one, though, if I have excess capital right now, should I invest in a company or buy a company?
Contextual matters for me because
100%.
I think, unfortunately, a lot of people are being convinced to buy companies that have never operated a business, and they're just looking for a world of pain. Most entrepreneurs that have excess capital are always better off investing in their existing business. So there's this thing called return on equity. It's one of Warren Buffett's number one metrics when he's looking at buying a company. And essentially, it's return on capital left in a business, or, essentially, how efficient is a business to make more money on the capital it has, its working capital. And like most businesses that are like good, mediocre, are getting a 50% return. So I just know, and that's why I'm a big fan, not of allowing the profits to stay in and just spend blindly, because a lot of my companies have CEOs that run them. So what I do is I take all the cash out of the business every month, and then I make the business fight for the investment in the projects.
Yeah.
So existing business owners, reinvest in your business in things that have a clear line of sight to increasing returns. Is always my preference. And second to that, if you do want to start from nothing and get somewhere going faster, buying a business, but highly recommend seller financing so that you can potentially de-risk your situation, because then they'll be motivated to stick around and help you with the transition.
100%. So, we'll get into your story a little bit. I know that you scaled and exited multiple companies. When you were the operator in the companies, were you doing the same thing? Were you pulling cash flow every single month and then reinvesting it mentally, or were you just dumping, and your liquidity was an actual liquidity event?
I think there's been different stages. So when I was in my early 20s, I was just trying to grow for growth's sake. I didn't even care that much about profitability.
Yeah.
And then I got lucky when I exited my first company and had that windfall. And then I realized I just studied more people, because once you have money, the biggest fear is you don't have money. So making money is actually relatively easy. It's still hard, but easy. Keeping it's hard. So once I understood how wealthy people actually manage their money and the way they thought about it, that's when I transitioned to more of a, hey, let's hit our EBITDA numbers, because that's obviously for a lot of businesses, the multiples are, top line, right? I'm a software guy, so it's a little skewed.
Yeah.
And then also when you start building teams and you have teams essentially fighting for budgets, and then they're being inefficient, and you're trying to create structures where they fight to be creative and get outcomes. I think I've trended more towards what I just shared, which is I like to take the cash out of the business and then have the teams fight for investments that they feel are going to be strategic long-term and or will produce big returns in the short term. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, it's smart. I feel like so many people when they're starting business, we idolize the Airbnbs and the Ubers and the Googles and everywhere where you just dump all your money in. And so people will grow for growth's sake. When oftentimes, depends on the business, but there are so many small businesses out there that if they would just stop hyper fixating on growth and would actually look at profitability, oftentimes, depending on the business, it's probably better just to lean down and just become hyper profitable and make a killing with fewer employees.
And they would grow. That's the funny part, because if you think about profitability requires less moving parts, which makes a simpler business model, which makes an easier thing to scale because you can't scale chaos. Like, I'm a big fan. I recommend the book Profit First by
Great
Mike
book.
Michalowicz all the time, because it creates a forcing function of what you just said. And then it turns out it keeps a simple business too. And the simple businesses are easier to grow.
Yep, 100%. Okay, next question. They said, he talks about AI often. What are the best AI tools right now? And should I keep only using ChatGPT? So what are your favorite, like, let's go 3 to 5 favorite AI tools right now?
Yeah, let's not do that. Like, so ChatGPT is a beautiful tool, and they have some really great AI models. The feature that it has the best so far today, and it could change in a week, is the ability to talk to it. So in the mobile app, if you actually click the bottom right corner, is like a little black thing. You just click that. You can have a conversation. So last night I was going to pick up my mom at the airport, and I was bored, and I just talked to it. I literally, it can do crazy stuff. Like, you can connect your Google accounts to it, your calendar, and you can just ask questions like, what does my day look like tomorrow? Or what time's the flight coming in from this city, landing in this city? Or, what's the weather like? And it has all information. So, like, the conversational nature of that experience, I think, is really interesting for OpenAI and ChatGPT. The other ones I use, Claude Sonnet 4 that just got released 2 weeks ago, its new research model is wildly incredible and performant, way better. I think about 20% better than OpenAI. So I'm a big fan of Claude, which is another language model. I'm a big fan of Gemini, Google's new model. Specifically, they just announced their new VO3 video generation tool. If you search VO3 AI image video examples, it is like cinematically accurate voice, video, and it's all fake AI. Like, it's not real, and it looks real. And that's part of the pro package with Gemini, which is Google's kind of solution to AI. And then the new one that's newish, they just kind of released the open to the public. It's called Manus, manus.im. And Manus, MANUS, is really good for, like, we use it at Martell Venture, so we do a lot of recruiting, a lot of analysis of companies. We use it for kind of deep research projects where we have a lot of documents and we're trying to get it to analyze things. And then I would say most of the other AI tools, unfortunately, are private because they're things I've built for myself. I'll give you one sneak peek because I might commercialize this one. It's called Social Sweep. So imagine if you had the ability to search on top of all your emails, all your calendar meetings. So essentially what it does is it grabs all your contacts, private, and does a data enrichment process. So it adds all the other information that you don't have on top of it. Then it uses AI to create an inference enhancement. Essentially, it asks a bunch of questions like, what are this person's favorite topic? Where do they live? Like, that's another one that you might not have the data, but if you ask AI, it goes and looks at your photos on Instagram and it says, okay, well, you've been posting for the last 3 years photos of Hawaii. He probably lives in Hawaii. So it does that. And then you can ask it cool questions like, hey, I want to connect with Braden. Who do I know that he knows?
Oh, that's cool.
Tell me why you think, and then tell me the message I should send my friend to get the introduction to Braden. And it does it all for you.
That's cool.
So Social Sweep is a tool I use every day for recruiting, for business development, for relationship development, that I got to imagine somebody at some point is going to build a commercial solution. We may spin it out. I'm not sure yet. I use that every day. And then the other one is like the Otters of the world. But so Otter is like any tool that records on meetings, which I think every company should.
Yep.
I'll give you 2 bonus ones. Okay, so Otter, everybody should, but I'll tell you what feature you should use. The ability to check how much you talk versus listen. Okay, so I had a team member on my team, super smart guy, but he talks a lot. I told him to look at his stats, an Otter, to calibrate that he's 25% talk, 75% listen, because dude, you already know what you know, man. Like, shut up and like just sit back, ask questions, and stop talking.
Yes to all that. I hadn't done the Manus one. That's interesting. I feel like really whatever one you're going to actually lean into and start to understand how to use AI. There is a skill set to using AI. And it took a long time for me to actually understand how to structure a question. Like, what's the proper way to give a prompt, get it to think out loud? How do you feed it information and get it to continue to learn? You can use all of them. You can use Grok, Claude, Gemini, ChatGPT, they can all do it to a point where you can start to customize your AI. And as you do that over the course of months and months, and now it's turned into years, like my AI, if you would, has turned so smart. And so, yes, there are a lot of good ones, do a lot of research, but honestly, I feel like people are hesitant to like lean into one. I would just choose your one and go, because the skill set of using
Because
AI and training
it
it is
learns
incredible.
you.
It does.
Yeah, it does learn you. Yeah, because you can ask any language model, tell me what you know about me and be detailed, and it will literally dump everything based on every chat and interaction and research project it's ever done for you.
Yeah, 100%. So one very similar, I kind of want to piggyback at the other question. I'm a small business owner. Where would be the first place you'd implement AI into your business to create efficiencies? We've kind of already hit on some of
Such a
these.
great question. Yeah, I mean, I have this philosophy in business that I've followed, which is always like figure out where the constraints are.
Yeah.
So like for me, it's things that take the most amount of my time that cost very little to pay somebody else to do. That's why I wrote the book, Buy Back Your Time.
Yep.
And when I think of that, most business owners should probably start with some level of like support or internal meeting minutes or some kind of like to-do list AI integration, because it's just, where do you spend a lot of time trying to like manage conversations or chats? So like the support side is an obvious one. But I would say the key is to default to using AI, kind of what you just alluded to. I mean, my philosophy is the future of really work is being more of a director than a doer. And to your point, when you said like it requires you to think about how you use it, not just doing it. So most people default to, they get a task list, they wake up in the morning, they build a task list and they go, okay, I'm gonna start executing. My philosophy is I build the task list and then I go, how much of this can be done by AI? Because that there is no future where more and more every month that goes by, that can't be done. I mean, ChatGPT 5 is rumored to be announced in the next, 5, 6, 7 weeks.
Yeah.
And the argument, or what's rumored to be launched then, is your whole last mile to-do list is going to be done by AI. For example, if I use it to research a vacation I'm going to do in, a couple months, that's today. But in the future, and probably in the next few weeks, it'll be research it, book it, schedule it, buy it, add it to the calendar. Like you'll be able to just talk to it and say like, I want to go here. Here are my preferences. I don't really care about this. I care about that. Tell it all you want. And it'll literally give you an itinerary and you look at it and you say, that looks good. And it'll go off and execute the last mile purchasing, scheduling, coordination with people, et cetera, because it has access to all your information. And it really then all of a sudden becomes this massive enabler of the doing, so that your job is to be creative on the director side of like, how do I use this to move big problems forward or innovate? I mean, I think that's the most exciting part.
Dude, yes, you are spot on. So we're in the process of building out an AI finance app, budgeting app almost. Think like Mint and AI come together.
Totally.
And we're building it for that reason. So right now it's like, hey, how much did I spend at McDonald's last year? And it can go pull it all. What did I invest last year? What was my personal APY? So it's more chatting like AI, but we've built it for that exact purpose, so that eventually you could say, hey, I want to automate $50 into Coinbase every single week. Will you go set that up? And it will have the back-end ability to actually be able to integrate into these people and be able to automate and do for you some of your investing. And so I think you're spot on. The actual action, right now it's used as research, but the action is coming pretty quick, hopefully in the next couple weeks, months, and it's going to be fun to watch what that changes and disrupts.
That's cool.
Cool. Okay, so moving on, I kind of want to go to part 2 where we talk through your story. I've heard your story a little bit. I think I listened to a podcast a while back with you and Ed where you talked a little bit about your story. Maybe give us a summary, early years, because people see Dan Martell online and put together kids, 2 boys, family, 100 million.
Yeah.
And then when I heard your story, your come up, I was mind blown. So walk us through a little bit. How did you get to the point where you introduced into tech, and what were the series of events that eventually got you there?
It's funny you brought up Ed. I was talking to him on this weekend, Ed Milet, and we were kind of talking about some media stuff we're thinking about doing together. But it is wild because when I hired him to coach me a couple of years ago, but 3 years ago, and at the time I wasn't as public with some of the challenges I went through as a teenager.
Yeah.
And I remember the first time after probably 3 or 4 or 5 calls, and then, we were talking about, because he's got a similar story where he he got a job when he was in his early 20s, essentially as a counselor at a boys facility, right? And essentially indirectly a mentor. And I said, well, in a really neat way, Ed, you are that for me today, but I'm that for the kids that I used to be, because as a teenager, I mean, I don't know, man, like it's kind of wild. If you had to like understand what I went through, if you've ever watched the show Sons of Anarchy,
Yeah.
it's kind of like that, man. I got involved at a very young age. I got taken out of my home, put in a crisis center, group homes, foster care, introduced to drugs, hanging out with people twice my age, doing stuff I shouldn't have been doing, a lot of crime. But I was an addict, right? So I had to support my habit. And yeah, what happened was I got in a high-speed chase. I was high and drunk, and I almost took my life. And luckily, God showed up. I didn't know that at the time. And I ended up doing I did 6 months in an adult prison, and then 11 months in a rehab center, a therapeutic community, they called Portage. And it's wild to think how I got into computers, because essentially I went there to rebuild like literally my whole life. Like I had no self-esteem. I had no healthy relationships in my life. My mom was an alcoholic. My dad, struggled with his challenges. And like I had 2 brothers and a sister. So even getting out of there at 17 was like, where am I going to live, and how am I going to stay sober, and what school should I go to? And it was a scary time, but I stayed working the summer at this therapeutic community, and I was helping clean out one of these old camps that were on site, because it was built on an old church camp. And in one of the rooms, there was a bunch of stuff we were cleaning out, but there was a table there sitting on top of it, a 486 computer, like an old computer. People that are old enough to remember. So this is like kind of 1997. So it was just sitting there, and next to it, a yellow book on Java programming. And I don't know why, but something called for me to open it up and read it. And I don't know, man. I read this book, and I was like reading the computer code, and I was like, oh, it kind of makes sense. And I just started the computer and followed the instructions of chapter 1 of this book. It was a Ziff Davis Java programming book. So I just started tapping into the computer, and 20 minutes later of tapping into the computer, I hit enter, and then pops out on the screen, hello world. And I don't know, man. Some part of me thought maybe I'm a computer genius and I just didn't know it. Maybe I'm the Doogie Howser of computers, if anybody remembers that. So that became my new addiction. It's funny because like I don't play video games, I don't gamble, I don't drink, I don't do drugs, because I know how addictive. Like when I do stuff, I go all in. I don't even play golf right now because I'm waiting till I have the desire, because I'd rather wake surf and kiteboard and snowboard. But like I became obsessed with writing code, and in many ways, the idea of building a business was my new addiction, and that's all I did. And I just got lucky that my process for dealing with what I was going through, growing up in a lot of chaos, there was a lot of comfort in the predictability of building software. Because when you write the code, as long as the computer's running, man, it'll do what you wrote for the rest of its life. And then you pair that with subscription business models, which is kind of how software started to get sold in 98, 99, kind of the online stuff. That's all I've ever done. Most people don't know this. I've never not done a subscription model in any business I've been involved in, and I've always charged USD dollars, even though I'm Canadian. Ever since I was 19. I don't know why. I just always thought, you know what? I don't care if I'm Canadian. People should pay me in American dollars. I'd rather have USD dollars. So it's kind of interesting that I went from that to, it took a while. It took almost a decade for me to finally make my first real money. That's why I'm not that impressive, dude. Like when I, these kids come up to me and they ask me questions, I'm like, okay, first off, you're 15.
Yeah.
So right out of the gate, you're way further along than I was. 2, you actually have a business that generates revenue. It took me like a decade to make my first 10K. And I wouldn't even been smart enough to ask that question. So like, I'm just hopefully just proof and evidence that, if you just keep pushing. Like, that's the one thing I know about me, man, is I won't make the same mistake twice. I'm a fast learner. I've been in tech. I've exited 3 companies. I've invested in over 100. 4 of them are billion-dollar companies. I have a venture studio where we launch a new company every month. So that's all I do. And then the media stuff has just been this desire to teach everything I've known. I want to die empty, essentially, and that's my philosophy. But I also learned so much that I think it'll be pretty hard for me to die empty because I keep getting exposed to new cool ideas I just want to share.
It is one of my least favorite parts of social media is having to deal with everyone that comes in. And it drives me nuts when I'm inside the comments trying to put information out there like you, and you get all these victim mentalities inside that comment section saying that they couldn't do it. And so I love hearing stories like this because anyone can. Yes, like I'm not going to sit there and say that zip code and everything else does not play a role in the ease of success. But the fact that anyone can do it, anyone can do it, that's probably my biggest takeaway from listening to your podcast, listening to your stuff, is the fight back to the narrative that people are predestined for certain lives. And you are living proof that, yeah, it took you a decade after you even learned this, and I kind of want to hear what you did during that decade, but anyone can grab information, become addicted, to use your own words, to starting a business and doing that grind, understand their seasons to life. Like it might take you 2 years to build a business, it might take you 10, it might take you 40. But there's seasons to life, and eventually, if you apply yourself and get 1% better every single day, eventually you will get there.
Yeah, you nailed it, man. It's the obsession. It's the addiction. I think some people are mildly interested in being successful. They're not driven to be successful.
Alex Hormozy put a video out, I think it was like last week, and I was watching it, just flipping on social media, consuming. And he said, everyone is jealous of where you are. No one's jealous of how you got there. They want the shortcut, which is why they ask you the questions. But they're unwilling to sit there and post social media content every single day for years and years and years.
And never miss.
Yep.
Never miss. I've published my YouTube channel every Monday. So for 8 years, I did every Monday, and I never missed a Monday. Now we do it a lot more, like every day. I think we're like 300 pieces of content a month or a week. And we don't miss. And that's everybody wants the outcome, but they're not willing to do the work.
So you learned coding. I know your first exit was somewhere in 2011, 2012, something like that. What is that decade in between there? Are you working jobs? Are you starting businesses? What are you doing?
It was all the above. So 17, I actually sold that company when I was 28 in 2008. But I started, so like I got out and I started building these like apps. Okay. So it's like, I'm just trying to build stuff that people would want to use.
Yeah.
This is like kind of even pre-internet. So the first thing I ever got paid that I built was a CD burning app because again, 97, this is Napster days. Most people don't realize this is how you got music. And on my computer was all the songs I had downloaded, either Napster or LimeWire. And then everybody wanted to build a CD, but then they would be sitting on my computer at my house trying to build their mixtape for their girlfriend. So I built an app that they could install on their home computer in Visual Basic 3.5, and it would essentially synchronize. It would connect to my computer at my house and synchronize all the MP3s on my hard drive, and then they could build their mixtape, their mix CD, and then it would, when they hit order, it would send it to my computer and it would queue it up to burn. I had like a multi-tray CD burner thing on my computer. And that way at night I could burn 4 CDs at a time and get paid $20 a piece. So I'd make $80 every time I go to bed. Doesn't sound like much, but hey man, I'm 17, 18. That's real money. And I don't have to work for somebody. And super illegal, FYI. No part of this was above board, but I just kept building cool stuff. I mean, I built an app for my friends to share the early days of digital photos because we all had like these 500 megapixels, or no, wasn't it 500K at first, and a 1 megapixel photo digital camera. It was wild. And so I just kept building stuff, man. I built a vacation rental site for my dad. That one actually made me like 30, 40 grand. But I didn't understand the business side. Yeah. I was more of a, I see people today fall in love with the technology more than the problem. That was me. I was getting more excitement off of learning a new programming language and building anything that anybody used than I cared about the business of what was being used. And I did that probably for 7 years until I was 24. And what changed at 24 after 3 failed companies, and when I say failed companies, I don't mean like side hustles. I mean like full-time, dedicated, let's try. There was the Martell Maritime Vacations, that failed. Then I did a hosting company with my brother called NB Host. That was the dumbest thing I've ever done. Selling commodities is like the worst bit. I mean, the margins were not there. I spent most of my time freezing my butt off in a server room setting up. Yep. So but I was learning. I was growing. Like, that's what people don't understand, is that even a business that failed, you became more. It's impossible for you not to.
Yep.
So then I, and what's funny is I was reading computer books like they're going out of style. One of the things my dad did that was really beautiful was he said, as long as you finish the book, I will buy you the next book. So you have an unlimited budget for your computer books. And, the local bookstore had a section on, computer books and technology. And I just worked my way through it, from the database side to the internet stuff to, architecture design. I was one of the youngest people to challenge the Microsoft Certified Solution Developer exams. That was a way to get credentialed. I think it was only $400 to do the exam, but it took me 6 months of hardcore studying to work through it. But as a 19, 20-year-old, I mean, I didn't go to university or college, self-taught. I became one of the youngest people to get my MCSD certification, which is kind of neat. Added zero value to my life because I'm an entrepreneur and it doesn't really matter. But, personally, it was interesting.
Yeah.
And then when I'm 23, my buddy Corey goes, hey man, I think, you're always talking about personal development. There's this book my friend Gare told me you should read, or I should read. I read it and it's awesome. I think you enjoy it, called The E-Myth, The Entrepreneurial Myth by Michael Gerber. And I didn't even read it. I listened to it in a car ride. And that one was oh, that's how a business is built. You create systems and processes, and there's different types of systems. So I immediately went online and searched E-Myth coach, and I found this guy named Bob, and I hired Bob. But the funny part is that Bob's $1,500 a month, and it's a year commitment. I think I had $3,000 in my bank account. But my philosophy was this: if Bob's good, within 2 months, I'll be able to pay him for the 3rd month and the 4th month. And that's how I got my first coach. And true to the process, we started my 3rd company, Spheric Technologies. And within the first year, we did $960,000 in revenue.
Jeez.
As a 24-year-old. So that was what I did. It was enterprise software that did kind of intranets back in 2004, 2005. And that was a company I sold 4 years later and became a multimillionaire. So I don't know, man. I'm just a big fan. I think the whole idea of personal development and your personal income is kind of blocked at what level you put in investment in yourself. I have an unlimited budget for 2 things in my life: my health and my personal growth. Those things, if you can show me a good opportunity for me to get a return, here's my money. Dude, I literally pay people 25, 50 grand for an hour of their time all the time. If I see somebody, I'm like, oh, that person has the answers to the test, and I can pay them 25 grand at my level. Everybody's at different levels.
Yeah.
I just have no problem doing that because I know what to do with that information. When I was smaller, maybe $10 felt like that. Maybe it was $50. Maybe it was my first course. Maybe it was my first seminar. Maybe it was my first business coach like Bob. But to me, I just think it's the most wildest thing in the world for somebody to know that somebody's got the blueprint to the thing you're about to go build. And instead of just paying for it, you sit back and try to figure it out.
Yeah, my dad always says there's 2 ways to learn: counsel or consequence, and one is a whole lot easier than the other. It was whenever I was in trouble in his office that he was always saying that. But fast forward, it's 100% true. And the people that are the most successful are oftentimes the ones most willing to give counsel to. I feel like so many people, they try to study networking and they try to study and they treat it like a science. And yes, it is something that you need to get good at and it is a skill set. But honestly, it's just be a genuine good person, provide value to them, and they'll provide it back. And so many people are scared to ask it. But there are so many people. The other thing that I love that you said and that I admire about you is I feel like as a world, we celebrate singular greatness way too much. We will celebrate the athlete. We'll celebrate the billionaire. We'll celebrate someone that has faith figured out. Holistic greatness. The people that have holistic greatness are few and far between. But those are the ones, in my opinion, that should be put on the pedestal, because it's one thing to go become worth $100 million and have marriages fail and faith fail and your health is crap and everything just down the line. But the ones that can actually keep a balanced life, and you have to buy back your time and do everything that we're going to talk about here in a little bit. You have to delegate. Like, it takes very intentional work to be able to do it, because it's easy. When you're addicted to something and you're obsessed about building a business, it is easy to get lost in it. But those ones that can balance and have holistic greatness, in my opinion, are the ones that I seek. Those are the ones I'll pay 50 grand for an hour, because not only do they have that figured out, they can also tell me how to do that and not mess up everything else inside their life, which is truly incredible.
That's a good distinction. I never thought of it that way. Yeah, I've always been more, I think, publicly talking about like, learn the thing from the person, leave the rest. Like, I want to learn first principles thinking from Elon Musk. I don't want parenting advice, as an example.
Yep.
But I do love your philosophy that states, yeah, but I want the holistic, because if I ask this person, they might give me the answer, but then it doesn't work with the rest of the machine, the system. And that's the risk that you take by taking advice from people that are one-dimensional. That's really good.
100%. So you decide to write Buy Back Your Time. I feel like one of the biggest learning moments, probably one of the hardest parts inside of scaling businesses, was the ego conflict that I had to actually step back and let people step in. Like, as an entrepreneur, you are oftentimes the best at doing everything. That's why you're at where you're at. Like, you could do everything better than probably anyone else could do everything, but you're not going to be the one that can do anything the best inside your business. So what business was it? At what point in your life did you realize this was going to be a big impact in your life? And why did you decide that's the book you write? You could have written so many books and gone and sold hundreds of thousands of copies. Why is that the one?
I mean, the real story behind it that most people don't know is my buddy Ron Friedman, who's a New York Times bestselling author. He was watching my YouTube videos, and he's the one that called me he texted me. He's like, "Hey, Dan, you free?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he goes, "You need a book." And I'm looking at my life and I'm like, "No, I don't." He's like, "Dude, you need a book." And I'm like, "Well, I appreciate your enthusiasm for me having a book. I look at I don't need a book. Like, I don't like, you know what I mean?"
Yeah.
And he says to me, he goes, "Out of all the people producing content on YouTube, you're the only person that when a video comes out, I sit there and I watch it and I study it, because you can tell the depth of your exposure and thought behind the thing. And like, you need to teach this in a book format because it's different than YouTube." And I was like, "No, but I'm listening." So 45 minutes later of him trying to convince me to write a book, this is what we got to. I said, "Ron, here's the deal. If you want me to write a book, you need to be the book CEO. I don't need another project. I'm busy. And I'll interview, your agent and other people that can support us on the book, the marketing side, et cetera. But you run point. And if so, you're my partner." And we negotiated, fair terms on the book deal. But Ron ran the book project. So like, what's cool is if you read the book. Yeah. So I did Buy Back Your Time for the book. And I acknowledge it in the very end. If you actually go to the very end, I acknowledge Ron, my book CEO, Lucinda, my agent, and Paul, my writing partner. And the team and many other incredible people, when you finally get to the book marketing side of it, it's quite a bit of work, are the reason why that book exists. And what happened is we started looking at a bunch of different ideas for things, like you said, that I could write about. And that was the one that he said, "Oh, I think the market is ready for that, and it's unique enough, and it's the one that could help the most people today with what you're sharing." And I wanted to write a business book, not a personal development book, and not a super niche software book. That's why Buy Back Your Time was the first book I wrote. January 2022 it came out. So 3 years ago. It'll be 3 years coming up this January.
Dang. Okay, so
and it's wild. It like came out. I remember my editor, or I did a deal with Penguin. And Noah, my editor, I said, "What would make you happy? First few weeks sales." He said, "Well, if you could sell 4,000 copies, that'd be amazing." It came out and we did almost 20,000. The book continues to sell more copies each week than the previous week, which is wild. And we were not a New York Times bestseller, but at this pace, it could be, which is crazy to think about. It'd be one of the very rare moments where a book that years later continued to snowball to a point where it became a New York Times bestseller.
100%. There's kind of a game to getting on that list, and almost everyone gets it in their first month because they do pre-sales and pre-orders and all this stuff. It's
If you
super
play
rare to
that
do
game.
that. Yep.
I'm not that smart.
Yep.
So like literally the book comes out. Now I had enough early traction with my customers to get some, but it was really the early, we did like a private read of the book on a Facebook group.
Yeah.
And it was just that feedback where I was like, oh, people really, because to me at first it hurt my feelings when they would say, I'm reading it for the second time and the third time. Like I didn't write a good enough book the first time they got it. That wasn't the issue. They wanted to study the book and then they were talking about it.
Yeah.
And that's honestly like, if you want a book to actually continue to be a perennial seller, you have to write a book that A is evergreen and B, there's something about it that makes people want to talk about it. Because if not, that's how anything grows.
Yeah. So this could take something from the book, or as I'm sure you've spoken on stages and helped every entrepreneur with this concept. What do you feel like for both managers, entrepreneurs, whoever it is that are trying to buy back their time? Where is the first place you look when you start a consultation for a business to try to find that 10 hours? Like what is it, time blocking? What is it? What's the actionable step that you tell people to go do?
So what's funny is it's less about doing, it's what they got to stop doing.
100%.
So it's funny because, people ask me all the time. They're like, hey, man, what do I need to do to be successful? I'm like, dude, it's not about what you got to add, man. It's what you got to take away. I was like, what time do you wake up? Do you have an alarm? Do you have a snooze button? That's got to stop. Did you go to the gym? No. Well, laying around all day, that's got to stop. So it's less about what I do and more what you got to stop doing. I mean, for example, most business owners need to understand the difference between a dumpster fire and a kitchen fire. A kitchen fire will burn your house down. A dumpster fire can burn. There's no company right now that exists that doesn't have problems. A good entrepreneur that learns to buy back their time understands which problems they can let other people deal with and which ones need their attention. So right off the bat, learning to stop being a fighter all the time, because that's what most entrepreneurs do. They just, hey, you got a problem? Got a problem? Got a problem? And they run around. It's like, how about you just let them deal with the problem? How about you create a scenario where they have a problem and then see if they can figure it out so you can build your people? Like, so I think, where you're going to get your time back is by right off the bat, honoring your calendar, designing your calendar. Like if you said you're going to do something, do it. And then from that place, you can start going, okay, what do I really need to do? And that's where we go to a time and energy audit and then how to get things off of your plate. But yeah, I wrote a whole chapter called the 5 Time Assassins that I think cost nothing. These are the 5 time assassins, cost you nothing to buy back your time by just stop doing those things that'll free up 10 hours a week. 20 hours a week.
Dang. Okay. If you solopreneur, individual entrepreneur, what is the first hire you would make?
That's a great question.
Are you going, there's so many different people, marketing, sales, executive assistant to maximize your time. Where are you going with your first hire? What would be your advice?
So this is the first hire, and it would be the thing I would sell everything I own. And I've got a very cool car collection. It would be a really sad day because I enjoy it, driving them quite a bit. But I would sell my car before I ever got rid of this person, and it's my executive assistant. So in my life, her name is Anne, and she's incredible. Anybody that's ever interacted, I'm assuming you probably interacted with her to get me on this call. Yeah, she's incredible. The reason why, as you said earlier, entrepreneurs are entrepreneurs because they can do everything. The challenge is they shouldn't do everything. And if you think about where they can get the most time back for the lowest amount of cost so that they can reinvest in doing the thing that makes them the most money or could bring the biggest opportunity to them, it's by having somebody in your life that can handle all the stuff. So a long time ago, I used to joke around with my brother. It's like, hey, if I ever go all in and make a big financial decision and lose it all, I need you to be okay with me, living with you in your basement or, if I have a family at the point, this is a long time ago. And he'd be like, yeah, no problem. Well, the other part of that conversation was, and you lend me money to hire an assistant. Because if I have nothing, but I would just convince somebody to come join me for a few months and I'll pay them later. But if I have nothing and I have my assistant, Dan, can pick up the phone. Dan can knock on doors. Dan can get in my car and drive around and go into businesses. I can go create opportunity. I need somebody that I can throw it over my shoulder and they catch it and go, okay, I'm going to get this scheduled. I'm going to get payment. I'm going to get the contract signed. I'm going to get them set up. I'm going to do the intake thing. So like, to me, all of the busy work, that should not be me, because truthfully, any person with some level of IQ can figure that out. And it's not to diminish the importance of that person, because honestly, my executive assistant makes a lot of money. And I love telling people that, because that's how important she is to me in my life. I want to go do the thing only I can do, and everything else that somebody else can support me on, I'm going to have somebody there. And then guess what? I get 30, 40 hours a week back. That's a true clone. I don't even like calling them an executive assistant. I think a partner is better. Like, she's my partner. Like, she's now technically chief of staff, because she was on 3 executive leadership team meetings on my behalf today. So I don't have to go. She's got the AI recorder. She's communicating to the people Dan's desires. She takes the AI recording, synthesizes it, puts it in Slack so that if I want, I can go check on the beats of what was said. But she's representing the philosophy. So I only talk with her, and she goes and she talks to the lawyers, the accountants. She's making sure all the CEOs got what they need. You know, she works with my house manager to make sure the house stuff is dealt with. Like, invaluable.
100%. Have you ever read the book Founder and Force Multiplier?
I've not.
It's a phenomenal book on executive assistants. It's fairly new. It's in the last probably 2-3 years.
It's called Founder and Force Multiplier.
Yeah. It's
Are those 2 separate books or one book?
One book. So Founder and Force Multiplier is the name of the book. I fought the idea of an executive assistant for a really long time. And I read that book with 10X's and 2X back to back. And my whole mind shift changed to exactly that. Like, it is get me out of the 80% that honestly I'm terrible at. Like, I am not detail oriented. I should not be doing it. Like, everything will fail if I do it. And since doing that, my exponential growth because of my executive assistant is, to you, invaluable. Like, and most people fight against it too long. They think they need to go get a COO or a sales staff or a marketing or advertising, all these different functions, where you could do 10 times that marketing or advertising or sales if you had an executive assistant behind you. And then you can slowly start backfilling those positions. I could not agree more on that.
Awesome.
I want to get to these rapid fire questions, but before I do that, kind of last question. So I make a lot of financial literacy content. Most of it is around investing. You are now a serial investor. You've invested, I think you said, over 100 different startups.
Yeah, I've got like 9 figures deployed in companies, so quite a bit.
Someone that is a successful entrepreneur that has invested in their business, but is to the point where they're starting to pull capital. What would be your investing advice? How do you diversify out of your business? Do you believe, are you going in the stock market? Are you going to go I know you do a lot of venture capital. Are you doing private equity? What is your advice to a successful entrepreneur and where they should diversify outside their business?
I'm so boring, dude. Nobody's going to like my answer. I had a great mentor, this guy named Ken, very wealthy guy. He used to work for Bill Gates. And I remember when I was in my 20s, I sold my first company. I called him up because I was just so like, what do I do now? And I'm going to get all this money. And he said, here's my philosophy. And it's served me right at this point. And he was incredibly wealthy. He said, half of it you should put into like low fee ETFs, right? If you want to go balance or S&P, whatever you want, okay? You can use all weather fund, kind of Ray Dalio style or whatever. And then the other half is go invest in your next business. Cause he's like, Dan, you're 28. Like, you're going to do another company. I was like, yes. He goes, and you're going to invest in other companies. I was like, yes. And he goes, okay, cool. Half goes away and it's in the boring. No, don't lose it. Keep it. And then the other half goes in wealth creation. So his philosophy is wealth preservation, wealth creation. And and it's actually quite interesting because they're different sides of the brain and different skill sets. So I've just always done that. Anytime I've had a windfall of capital, an investment I made that gets some liquidity, I take half, I put it in the don't lose it bucket, and I go double down, dollar cost average into the market. Some strategy around it, but not that complicated because I don't want it. The whole point is I don't want the mental, I actually get mad sometimes that it's so liquid because I don't even want it to be liquid because I like the idea of like set it and forget it.
Yep.
And then the other part is in ventures. And then this is for me is in domains that I know I have unfair informational knowledge around.
Yep.
And I think that's the mistake. When I've lost money, and I have, it's when I got involved in a painting franchise as a software founder. Okay, like I'm going to say this out loud: a painting franchise, a dating website, a restaurant franchise. I mean, just stuff I shouldn't have been involved. Oh, direct to consumer stuff. Like, what am I doing? I'm a software guy. So once I made those dumb decisions, learned my lessons, I then went, all right, now we're going into, I created a pool of capital for angel investing in software companies that I know. I know how to do due diligence on the software code. I know how to look at the reports and find out the full. Like I have an unfair information advantage there. Sure. Then I did another company. And so I've always had an operating software company. And then later on in life, when I started having even more capital, again, 50 went to the boring stuff, 50 went into more high risk stuff, always software. Then I started buying software companies. So I have a whole $100 million holdco called Big Band Software with my partner, Kevin. And then today I have Martell Ventures, and we incubate and launch AI companies with the relationships that I've built over 28 years of other software and tech founders, either I invested in or people I've met at events and I've just known them, social media. And so that's kind of my philosophy. And I'm not even saying it's the right one for everybody. It's the one that makes me happiest, because I can sleep incredibly well knowing that the lifestyle I've created for myself is very fortified. And in the same breath, live in this really high pace, exciting venture capital / innovation AI and media, because that's part of that.
Yeah.
And get my fix. You know what I mean? And I have the time to travel the world because I'm not CEOing any of those companies.
100%. I feel like every single person will have a leg up in some industry. A lot of business owners too. One of my favorite parts of this podcast is meeting so many people. They'll start a business and it doesn't actually end up just like you, their most profitable business. But when you get in to an industry and start to learn it, you start identifying opportunities because you have a leg up on everyone else, and you can start to pivot into these different lines of businesses or verticals, going up, down, whatever it is, because you have a leg up on everyone else. Everyone else outside the industry trying to start business and everything don't have the same perspective and grassroots knowledge that you do. And so I don't care if you're in medical sales. I don't care if you're a plumber. I don't care if you're in software. You have a leg up somewhere. And it's just identifying what it is, taking a step back, looking in your industry and saying, what needs fixed that I know that the normal person outside the industry wouldn't know, and then lean into it. Whether that's venture investing passive, whether that's active, actually starting companies, doesn't really matter. I love that. That's phenomenal advice. Okay, I asked the same 6 questions to every single guest at the end. These are rapid fire. You can just go off the top of the head, but it's fun just to see what everyone kind of answers. So first one's kind of a layup one, but what are the top 3 pieces of advice you would offer someone that is just starting their career or business today? They're 22, just starting out. What are the 3 pieces of advice you'd give them?
The more you help other people achieve what they want, the more you'll get. 2, bigger, dream bigger, way bigger. And 3rd, feedback is the oxygen of success. Default to getting feedback.
Those are great. Way to pull those out. If you had $5,000 to your name right now and you could not build a business in your current industry, where would you go? What would you build?
Oh, that's not fun. I was immediately going to go to AI automation. Something in architecture. I do love building stuff. So I think something in construction.
Cool. Okay, I'll give you best after this, but let's start worst. What is the worst investment you've ever made?
Probably that dumb dating website when I was in my 20s. Just I have no reason to be in it. Lost $250,000 when that was a lot of money for me, and just stupid.
Were you an operator or a passive investor on that one?
Passive investor, did the deal because some random person I met said it was going to be a huge thing. 1999, just dumb.
Dang. Okay, what's the best investment you've ever made?
Probably Hootsuite. I invested in their first money and they exited for $1 billion 6 years later.
Jeez. That's crazy.
Yeah, that was, and they didn't end up winning. I mean, that sucks. I got all my liquidity at the $1 billion valuation. I think they just did around at like 300 million. So I feel bad for everybody else. But again, knowing when to get out is actually part of the skill.
1,000%. Okay, last question. Looking back, is there anything you would have done different in your business or advice you'd give someone from your journey?
Everything I put out on the internet, man. Like that's almost like everything I put out. But if I had to pick something specific, Be kinder to talent. Like I was so frustrated and angry. I was so driven starting off in my 20s that I didn't have to bring the emotions to it. And I could have got a lot more done.
Interesting. That's a good one. Awesome. Well, I appreciate you. This has been a lot of fun. If people want to get in touch with you, what's the easiest way for someone to get in touch with you or reach out?
Well, I'll give you guys something awesome. So Instagram is my favorite, but here's the deal. Since you guys are listening, follow me on Instagram, Dan Martell, 2 L's of Martell. Once you follow me, then message me, EA, executive assistant, because we were talking about this. Most people don't know what they would give their executive assistant. So I actually had mine recently pull my internal playbook and sanitize it, removed all my personal preferences. And I will send you the direct link to my Google Docs. So just send me the word EA on Instagram, but you got to follow me because I'm trying to grow my audience. And I will send them the internal Google. There's no opt-in, no nothing. Just the link. Then they can see what a real good system looks like, right? North Star principles, templates, preference files, they're all there. So that's my gift to everybody listening.
That is incredible. I'm going to have my EA do it just because I'm super curious. I feel like you can always improve systems. That's awesome.
Always.
Thank you, Dan. This has been phenomenal.
It's an honor. Thanks for the time.
If you loved this conversation, you are going to love my conversation with Robert Croak. Click here to watch it.